What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Phase Mask Fantasy. Thanks for coming in and hanging out this Tuesday evening, late July. Training camp is upon us. Football is officially back in its purest form. A lot to sort through and work through as teams, players report to their respective camps. It all gets underway this week. Every team reports. The preseason is just in just a couple of weeks with the start of the Hall of Fame game. Get hype, everybody. Get excited. It's football season again. Got some wide receiver rankings ahead of the 2024 season today. We'll do the top 12. So, the standard default wide receiver ones, at least as far as preseason rankings go for fantasy purposes. So we'll get into that. We'll first start with some news and notes around the league. There, of course, we're starting to get a little bit more of a cadence as far as headlines, updates about players and what's going on around the league. So we'll get into that first before we get into the rankings. And, of course, as always, this is a live AMA. So any questions you may have, comments, whatever have you, feel free to fire them off. And just as an FYI for anybody who, whether you've caught a few of my streams recently or maybe you're catching up for the first time this offseason, again, as training camp gets underway, this is when we really start to see some folks, some more folks return, with the start of football season. This will be my last stream for a couple of weeks. I have to go on a work assignment that's going to pull me away from home for a couple of weeks. So while I will have the opportunity to still put some videos out on the channel, this will be the last stream for a little bit, probably until about mid-August. So I think that's the second week of preseason. It might be the first full week of preseason, but the second week I think is a little bit more likely. Nevertheless, I will be back then. So you may not see me live for a little bit, but I am around. If anybody has any questions or thoughts that come up, and of course you can expect to see videos still get churned out on the channel here and there. So just wanted to drop that little reminder. Or it could be brand new news for some folks. So just an FYI. I'm not going too far. There might be a bit of a hiatus. But I'll be around. Let's get to the news and notes. Again, as training camp kicks off, there's a little bit more of them than when we were in the doldrums of the offseason just a couple of weeks ago. I would say maybe the big one here is a big one for Cincinnati. Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow has been fully cleared for contact after he suffered a season-ending wrist injury in Week 11 last year. He's back. We're wheels up on the Bengals offense. Obviously, there's still a little bit of song and dance going on between the team and T. Higgins. The team did not to extend him after he was slapped with the franchise tag, so Higgins will play out the year on a one-year deal. We'll see how that shakes out over the course of the season. But good news all around for Cincinnati. Their starting quarterback and one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when healthy is back, ready to go. Wheels up for Jamar Chase. Wheels up for T. Higgins as long as he's in the lineup. The backfield is a little bit more of a let's see how things play out situation, but Joe Burrow is good news for everybody. Zach Moss, Chase Brown, they have Mike Gesicki now at tight end. Their third receiver is Trenton Irwin, most likely. Jermaine Burton is the rookie wide receiver that folks are excited about high on. We'll see if he can force any type of timeshare for that third receiver spot with Trenton Irwin. Wheels up all around for the Bengals offense with Burrow back in the fold. Another piece of injury news: Vikings tight end T.J. Hockenson is reportedly well ahead of schedule in his recovery. It is that time of the year. It is that time of the offseason. Everybody's well ahead of schedule. We want to put the positive vibes out there, the good news out there. Everybody's way ahead of schedule. Everybody looks great, right? This is standard injury updates in July, regardless of what the injury was that was suffered last year. Hawkinson's was a serious one, and it happened late. I think it was week 15 or 16. It was the very end of the season for the Vikings. Torn ACL and MCL. I'd be a little bit more optimistic about the reports if it was just a torn ACL. If it was just a clean break of the torn ACL, no additional ligament damage, then okay. All right, fine. Feeling good about Hockenson. Maybe he's back to being himself by week 3 or week 4. The torn MCL on top of the torn ACL makes me think that this is just kind of smoke and mirrors, this update. I'm not as enthusiastic about TJ Hockenson coming into this season. Certainly not for week 1. Maybe for mid-season, like maybe week 8. He's out there and he's giving you 75 to 80% of what you expect from TJ Hockenson on a week-to-week basis. But this was a more complicated injury, torn ACL and MCL. The timeline is going to be murky because of when he suffered the injury. So just because we got this update doesn't make me feel super great about it. Super great about TJ Hockenson. Plus, it's a whole new offense. It's going to be Sam Darnold most likely taking starter reps for the first half of the season. Maybe that goes well. Maybe Sam Darnold keeps the Vikings afloat, a veteran presence at quarterback. Maybe he's a stabilizer for a little bit longer than anticipated. But if the Vikings are losing games, if they're 1-4, 2-5, 1-5, if they're not in the playoff race by week 6 or week 7, we all know how this goes. They drafted J.J. McCarthy 10th overall. Not only are the fans going to start clamoring for it, but you're going to start to get the pundits, the national media are going to start questioning, okay, when are the Vikings going to make this switch? It's going to put, external pressure on Minnesota to make a change. So, does that disrupt the flow of whatever type of, rhythm that the offense gets in with Darnold, whether that's good or bad? Obviously, it might not be great if they're in a losing situation, but then they have to transfer or switch things over to McCarthy, who's a rookie. He might be having to go in there a little sooner than the Vikings would want, but it makes sense for him to just start to get his feet wet and get experience, get exposure, and then what does that mean for Justin Jefferson, TJ Hockenson, Jordan Addison, and that's even if Hockenson is able to return and give them, again, something in the 80th percentile range of what you expect normally from a healthy TJ Hockenson. So that's a volatile situation. I'm not super in on TJ Hockenson this year. Yes, he's dirt cheap in redraft leagues, at least in best ball. His ADP is, you can have him 140-plus picks into a draft. So he's free. It's a very low-risk gamble. I don't know that you're going to get that much from him, and I'm not letting this positive piece of news change my mind as of right now. Good for TJ Hockenson if he actually is ahead of schedule and is getting and is out there on the field and contributing sooner than expected, but we did this song and dance last year with a guy like, Javonte Williams. I know it's apples to oranges comparing positions, but the injury that he suffered was similar, that he was bouncing back from. Multiple ligament tear in the knee that requires a lengthy rehab process. Return to play doesn't mean a return to performance. I would be steering away from I would still be steering away from TJ Hockenson this year, even though we just got a good piece of news or a good injury update for him. Coach John Harbaugh in Baltimore. High praise for a guy who I feel like we've received a lot of high praise for over the past couple of years. said that he expects, I'm paraphrasing his words right now, but he expects Rashad Bateman to be a top receiver in the league for us. So I guess, the for us is, I guess, a little extra emphasis on the for us part. They're planning on him being a top receiver in the league. Rashad Bateman is entering his 4th season. High expectations, being a former first-round pick, and it hasn't really come to fruition. Injuries have hampered him every single season of his career. Hasn't really gotten on track thus far to start his NFL career. Has presumably been leapfrogged on the depth chart and in the pecking order by Zay Flowers, who had a solid season for them last year. They still have Mark Andrews, who is considered a top 5 tight end in the league. They have an emerging talent, also a tight end in Isaiah Likely. It's a little thin after that as far as the depth chart, the receiving depth chart in Baltimore. So Bateman's going to have an opportunity to start and contribute. But he's got to stay. He's got to stay on the field, which he hasn't done for the first 3 years of his career. So, I mean, 4th time could be the charm. His ADP has absolutely plummeted. I think it's somewhere in the 160s. I'll pull that up right now. At least on Underdog Fantasy, that is the offseason ADP that I lean on. For anybody who maybe uses FanDuel or DraftKings or Yahoo or whatever your source may be, Bateman's ADP on Underdog Fantasy is 170. So he's not even getting drafted as of right now in 10-team leagues. He might get drafted in the last round of, say, a 12-team redraft league. Maybe. But high praise from John Harbaugh for Rashad Bateman. You're not taking a huge risk drafting a guy who's available 170 picks into a draft, but also in shallower redraft leagues, he could easily just be a waiver wire ad after week 1 if he has any type of noteworthy performance. Brandon Ayuk has reported to training camp. I would say that's a significant update given the fact that he requested a trade last week. I talked about this a little bit last week. I am still of the belief that Brandon Ayuk will be a 49er for the 2024 season. I do not think he's going to get traded. There were similar issues with Deebo Samuel a couple years ago. He wanted to trade. He wasn't happy with how negotiations were going between him and the team. They ultimately came to an agreement prior to the season, and everything worked out. In that regard, I have to imagine a similar scenario will play out between San Francisco and Brandon Ayuk. They are on the short list of preseason Super Bowl contenders. Brandon Ayuk makes them better and gives them a better chance if he's on the team as opposed to as if he's not on the team. I think they will find a way to get something done. He wants, I don't want to put words into his mouth. He's probably looking somewhere in the category of $20 million a year. That's the going rate for top receivers these days, and that's what Brandon Ayuk is. He's a top 10, top 12 wide receiver in the NFL. It could be top 15 depending on who you ask or depending on the day. But he's an upper echelon wide receiver, one of the best ones in the NFL. He wants to get paid like one, and deservedly so. We'll see if him and San Francisco can come to some form of agreement. I think they will, and the fact that he reported to training camp to me is a good sign. I would imagine he's not going to practice. Maybe he joins meetings. He does the Jordan Love thing, what Jordan Love is doing with Green Bay right now. He's kind of just holding himself out of practice until the deal gets done, until we put pen to paper. Probably will join position group meetings. He'll be present for drills and all of that, probably off to the side, stuff like that. But the fact that he's present, to me, is a good sign. Sometimes you see holdouts. Duh, you guys know this. Brandon Ayuk isn't holding it. He's holding in, right? That's the new thing. That's the it's not super new, but that's the recent thing in recent years. Players hold in where they report to camp, and then there's still an opportunity for them to be present. Good soldier, do all that stuff, be present with the team, leave the door open for negotiations. I do think Brandon Ayuk will be a San Francisco 49er when the season starts. corresponding news update, the 49ers first-round pick, Ricky Pearsall, injured his hamstring, will open training camp on the PUP list. He can come off the PUP list at any time. This isn't during the season where he has to miss 4 weeks, or prior to the season where if they put him on the PUP list, he has to miss 4 weeks. He can come off that list at any time. But that's something to note. That's something to monitor. Soft tissue injuries are always concerning, no matter how severe. Even if it's a minor tweak, it's still something that you want to keep in mind when you're making your notes, when you're writing your notes and preparing for your redraft. When your draft for your redraft league, and you're keeping tabs on depth options, that who you want to identify, who you want in the later rounds. Ricky Pearsall injured his hamstring. He can come off the PUP list at any time, but that did happen, so it's noteworthy. There was a hot minute where people were like, Ricky Pearsall season, when Brandon Ayuk requested the trade. Let's go ahead and pump the brakes on that one. Hey, what's going on, Alex? Good to see you, man. Yep, we still have some contracts to sort out with some of the wide receivers. I think that should likely happen with CD and Jamar Chase. But Jamar, apparently, according to Bengals owner Mike Brown, that might have to wait until next season, which isn't surprising. It's a notoriously cheap franchise, so not a necessarily surprising update. But we will see what happens there. Another good bit of news, wide receiver Amari Cooper agreed with the Cleveland Browns, getting a $5 million raise, while the team is also guaranteeing him $20 million currently left on his contract. So Cooper gets the money he's looking for. After this season, he will be a free agent, so he gets the freedom and flexibility to negotiate a new deal after next year, assuming he continues to perform at a high level like he always has. This locks him in, entrenches him surely as Cleveland's top option in the pecking order once again this year. I quite like Amari Cooper at his 4th round ADP. I think, there's a couple of factors here. Obviously, his play tailed off when Deshaun Watson was lost for the season, but then it kind of got rejuvenated when Joe Flacco was signed and inserted into the lineup. But there was a stretch where he wasn't really performing because the offense was attempting to operate with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a 7th-round rookie, and who clearly just wasn't ready for the moment, for the situation. Not his fault. So Cooper's play fell off a little bit. It picked back up with Flacco. His ADP has settled in the 4th round. I think it's around 40, 41. I quite like Cooper at that cost, and I don't mind grabbing him 3 or 4 spots earlier than that, 4 or 5 spots earlier than that. Cooper's a damn good wide receiver, clear-cut top option in their receiving game once again. Theoretically gets a boost with Deshaun Watson back, even though Deshaun Watson did not look good in his limited action last year. He had his moments, but on the whole, it was pretty unimpressive. We'll see about that. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes with Deshaun Watson. But he's good enough. He's good enough to prop up Amari Cooper to have another at least strong wide receiver 2 campaign. I like Cooper quite a bit at cost. Just a couple more pieces here. Here we go again. The best shape of his life news. This is like ho-hum for the offseason. Packers running back A.J. Dillon, according to Green Bay head coach Matt LaFleur, is in the best shape of his life. Woohoo! Let's go, A.J. Dillon. He didn't look good last year, man. And, that doesn't necessarily mean that he'll be bad this year, but the team brought in Josh Jacobs. They drafted Marshawn Lloyd. We'll see how that shakes out between Lloyd and Dillon. Jacobs is, of course, the bell cow. At least he's being paid like one for this year. Much has been made about the structure of Jacobs' contract. It's a 3-year deal, but the way that the money is shaped out, it's essentially a 1-year deal. Like Jacobs is on some sort of pseudo prove-it deal. I'm not really worried about Jacobs from that perspective. I think he's going to bounce back in a much better situation than the one that he was in last year. Better offense, better team all the way around. Just those little details, those little things help a running back. The Packers historically run the ball well. The offense is better than Vegas's. The team is better than Vegas's. Expect Jacobs to bounce back, and then we'll see how things shake out behind him between Dillon and Lloyd. Dillon has the leg up from a perspective of experience. Lloyd is the shiny new addition to the backfield, third-round pick. Was an interesting name floating around in the pre-draft process. In a thin running back class, he's considered explosive. He's got his warts, fumbling. Ball security was an issue. Pass protection is a question coming out of USC. But he's expected to add an explosive element if he can clean up the rest of his overall game. We'll see how that shakes out. Dillon's a vet. He's got the experience, but he wasn't good last year. He just wasn't good last year. If they had a little bit more confidence in him, maybe they make a running back selection in the 5th or 6th round instead of the 3rd round. So we'll see. I'm not putting a ton of stock into A.J. Dillon. He's free. I mean, that is what I can say about A.J. Dillon as far as running back depth. He is free. What even is his ADP on Underdog Fantasy? I can pull it up right here. I'm happy to do that. Dillon's ADP on Underdog Fantasy is, oh my God, it's 215. We're leaving him for dead. That might be a little too low. I'm not moving A.J. Dillon up my rankings very high just because Matt LaFleur says he's in the best shape of his life. 215 might be a little disrespectful. I mean, at least he still cleared 100 fantasy points or half PPR points last year. It wasn't good, though. Make no mistake. Scored just 2 touchdowns. Only 613 rushing yards on 178 attempts. Not very strong. 215 might be a little too low, but I mean, what do you move him up like 5 spots to 210? Like, it's not. We can't exactly pound the drum for a guy like A.J. Dillon after the moves that the Packers made this offseason. But he's in the best shape of his life, so do with that what you would like to do. And then as recently as an hour ago, again, these are grain of salt updates, but the first running back to get reps after Isaiah Pacheco during the first team run, this is with Kansas City, of course, was Deneric Prince, who was an undrafted free agent last year. He was apparently getting opportunities over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Known bust at this point. Sorry, Clyde, but let's call a spade a spade. So he's third. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on the depth chart. Theoretically, obviously, this is a grain of salt update. The Chiefs could just be messing around. They can do whatever they want. They're the defending champs times 2 and 3 and 4 or whatever it is. So they can mess around with their depth chart and what they want to do in training camp all they want, and nobody should bat an eye. They have the freedom to do whatever they want. Nobody can really question or judge what they're doing. And maybe this is just the case. I mean, look, Clyde clearly hasn't panned out, right? He wasn't deserving of being a first-round pick. At this point, he probably wasn't deserving of being anything more than like a 4th or 5th round pick. So they want to see what they have in a guy like Deneric Prince, who was in the developmental role last year as an undrafted free agent. Maybe they feel a little bit better about him in their second season. Even though they brought Clyde back on a 1-year deal, that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. So, just something to keep an eye on. Isaiah Pacheco is obviously the guy. That's another dude who I like at his ADP. He's getting drafted. Him and Travis Etienne, they're getting drafted around that 42, 43, 44 range, at least on Underdog Fantasy. That's best ball, so their ADP is going to be a little higher than that in redraft, but I like both of those guys at cost quite a bit, especially with Pacheco. His ADP fell last year at the start of the season because he was nursing some offseason injuries. He's not dealing with that this year. He's healthy coming in, so no concerns about a potential slow start with Pacheco. I like his ADP quite a bit. Just throwing that out there. And then, of course, Deneric Prince. If you happen to find yourself with Pacheco, Deneric Prince might be your handcuff, might be your insurance policy. Based on this first update of the day, from training camp, and Kadarius Toney was getting running back snaps today as well, for whatever that's worth. Okay, I think that does it for news and notes. If there's anything that I didn't cover that you would like me to touch on, by all means, let me know in the comments. Again, this is a live AMA. Happy to take questions in the questions, comments, whatever you have, as they pop up. But the time has come for me to go through the top 12 wide receiver rankings, at least for the preseason rankings, training camp edition. As we head into the 2024 season, I will be using half PPR as the scoring template. So we may have to adjust a little bit for standard versus full PPR. But half PPR, I think, is the most common, most popular scoring format these days. You get that perfect blend of not giving too much love to wide receivers, but also not, pumping up the running backs too much by just going with standard scoring. Your league is obviously its own entity, and whatever your scoring is, you may have to adjust a little bit. If you would like me to maybe expand on, hey, I do have standard scoring, or I do have PPR scoring, does it change your ranking between these two guys? I can let you know. Just let me know if that's a question that comes up organically, and we can get into it. All right, I will share all 12 at once, so you can kind of soak it in, absorb it all the information at once. You can ask the questions, as I'm sure there's going to be a name or two left out where some people are going to be like, "Where's that guy? This list is trash." That's how it goes. Not that I'm saying you guys will say that, but if you do, that's okay. It's your own thoughts. You may see something that you don't like. You may see something you really agree with. You may see something you don't agree with. Let me know. We can have a conversation about it. But without further ado, the top 12 wide receiver preseason rankings for 2024. There we go. Let me move myself down. I can move myself around so that we can get the information that I have shared here and there. Pretty straightforward, again, from a perspective of Underdog Fantasy. I have a couple of differences at the end of the list. The top of the list is pretty standard. I don't think there's going to be too many changes. You're going to have some folks who have, Jamar Chase like a little higher, Justin Jefferson maybe a little lower because of his quarterback situation. But on the whole, I don't think I have too many drastic calls before maybe that 10 spot, that 10 or 9 spot in the rankings. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Drake London. That's my top 12. So some names like Marvin Harrison, Brandon Ayuk, the guy I just got done talking about, didn't quite make the cut. Chris Olave, Nico Collins. These are all excellent receivers. If I could make a 20-name list of wide receivers, they would all make it. But only 12 can make what is considered by default the wide receiver 1 list. And this is what I ultimately decided to go with. Their ADP is in the second column next to their name, and then I got a little bit of information, just very high level over on the right-hand side. The top of the wide receiver rankings, in my opinion, this year is not super cut and dry, whereas in like the past couple of years it maybe has been. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, and Jamar Chase all have an argument for the wide receiver 1 overall, in my opinion. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is honestly in that conversation as well. The reason I don't have him over Justin Jefferson is because while I do think as excellent as Amon-Ra was, I mean, hell, he was the wide receiver 3 overall last year, wide receiver 4 in points per game. I went with Justin Jefferson from a pure accomplishment / talent perspective, and that's not to say that Amon-Ra isn't at or near that level of talent. But Justin Jefferson was widely considered coming into the season last year as the best receiver in football, so he's actually getting knocked down a couple of pegs. Last year he was ranked consensus wide receiver 1. He's 4th this year, not just in this list, but according to Underdog ADP. With the change in quarterback, obviously hurts him a little bit. So I don't think he has necessarily wide receiver 1 overall upside with the offense that he is working with, but I think his floor is still remarkably high. I think he's still incredibly safe. I think he will be peppered with targets. Backup quarterbacks tend to hyper-target their top options. Sam Darnold has been recently a backup quarterback. We'll see what J.J. McCarthy does if and when he gets in there this year. I just think that Jefferson is going to get peppered with as many opportunities as possible, and therefore maybe he doesn't have that overall wide receiver 1 ceiling, but his floor is still incredibly strong, incredibly sturdy. So I think he's safe in that regard. A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, that's like the next tier. Garrett Wilson, rough year for him last year, not totally his fault, but I think he still has clear-cut wide receiver 1 upside with an even modestly healthy Aaron Rodgers. And then I shook it up a little bit compared to Underdog ADPs. I've got Deebo Samuel, Devontae Evans, Mike Evans, and Drake London rounding out the top 12. Just missing the cut, again, guys like Marvin Harrison, guys like Brandon Ayuk, guys like Chris Olave, guys like Nico Collins. The reason I have CeeDee Lamb number 1 is pretty simple. The top 3 guys all have good quarterback play, good to really good quarterback play that they can rely on. The difference between CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase is the ancillary options in the Cowboys offense versus the ancillary options in the Dolphins and Bengals offenses, respectively. Brandon Cooks is a solid player and has been for a long time. But in the year 2024, he's not on the same level as Jalen Waddle or T. Higgins, respectively. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all it comes down to. Not only is CeeDee Lamb the clear alpha for the Cowboys, but their ancillary options are just simply not to the same level as the other elite wide receivers and the teammates that they have in their offenses. CeeDee took his game to another level last year. He was the wide receiver 1 in total points. He was the wide receiver 2 in points per game by like a hair. Him and Tyreek were, I think it was like 19.9 and 19.8 or 19.8 and 19.7, something like that. It was right there. Of course, Jalen Waddle missed a little bit of time with injury. He was in and out of the lineup. It felt like he would get hurt, but then he would come back into the game, but then he would get hurt. And he wouldn't like miss. He didn't miss like chunks of games. He missed like chunks. He missed games within the game itself. He didn't miss chunks of weeks, is what I should say. If that course corrects to him being healthy, he siphons targets. A healthy T. Higgins siphons targets. Brandon Cooks doesn't siphon targets, at least what we can expect, at the same rate, at the same level as those other guys. CeeDee is and should be the focal point of the Cowboys offense. They do not have anybody else that can be considered a focal point as far as the other pass catchers or what's in the backfield. The Cowboys offense in 2024 is going to be Dak throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb again and again and again and hoping for the best. Now, that's not a slight on CeeDee as far as hoping for the best. He's excellent. He's unbelievable. He was the wide receiver 1 last year. The question will be, do the Cowboys have enough on offense where defenses don't have to spend every single resource that they have trying to slow CD down. They weren't able to do it last year, so I have no reason to put him anywhere other than first this year. You're going to have folks who have Tyreek Hill number 1 overall. You're going to have folks who probably, they're trying to project, and they have Jamar Chase number 1 overall. You're going to have, that's what people do. They project based on, it's a combination of things. The research that you do and maybe what your gut tells you. People are going to have Jamar Chase number 1 overall. Joe Burrow is back. Jamar Chase has proven to be an elite, top 3 receiver in the league. Why shouldn't I put him number 1 overall? You're going to have those rankings. That's fine. It's hard to dispute it. We're splitting hairs about 3 excellent wide receivers. Really 5, because Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra are in that conversation. But when push comes to shove, one has to get ranked ahead of the other. CD1, I have to give the edge to Tyreek over Jamar Chase because Tyreek actually put up the numbers last year. And obviously he didn't lose Tua the way that Jamar Chase lost Joe Burrow, but that offense was struggling here and there with Joe Burrow. Now, again, Burrow suffered a preseason injury last year in addition to the wrist injury he suffered week 11. So the Bengals offense never really had a chance to get into any type of rhythm whatsoever. It was very up and down last year. Tyreek put the numbers up and continues to be the biggest big play wide receiver in the league. Every time you watch Tyreek Hill, it's just kind of like you look down, you take a sip of beer, you look up, and it's like, oh, he's running free for a 40-yard touchdown. Tyreek is still, even at age 29, the biggest big play threat at the position in the league. I have him 2, just behind CD, just because the Dolphins also have another really good, very good wide receiver to throw the ball to on the other side in Jalen Waddle. Those 2 are 1 and 2. CD, again, wide receiver 1 in total points in 2023, wide receiver 2 in points per game. Tyreek was wide receiver 2 in total points, wide receiver 1 in points per game. I think Tyreek missed 1 game. It was week 15. It was like the first week of the playoffs. It was a brutal loss for anybody who had him going into the whoever had him going into the first round of the playoffs. You didn't have your wide receiver 1 to hang your hat on going into your matchup. So that sucked. So that knocked his total points down, not his points per game, by a hair. 2 studs, 2 excellent players, the best at what they do. I can't put CD and Tyreek anywhere other than 1 and 2 respectively. I give the edge to CD at 1 because the Cowboys wide receiver 2 is Brandon Cooks. No disrespect. Brandon Cooks has been a damn good receiver for his career. But in 2024, he's not at the same level as Jalen Waddle. Another strong option the Dolphins can turn to other than Tyreek Hill for Tua. And then Jamar 3, this is a little bit projecting, right? Because Amon-Ra St. Brown has a case to be 3 over both Chase and Justin Jefferson. Because he actually did it. He actually put up the numbers. Wide receiver 3 in total points for Amon-Ra, wide receiver 4 in points per game. Amon-Ra's a stud. Amon-Ra is the man. He's awesome. I would say in full PPR leagues, here I'll throw this out there as far as like my first caveat from a scoring perspective. In full PPR leagues, if you want to put Amon-Ra 3rd overall, that's fine. I have no problem with that. In half PPR, I have him down here at 5 instead of 3. Behind Chase, because I think Chase is just we're talking about two explosive guys. I think Chase is just a little more explosive. We're splitting hairs, but Chase is just like a more explosive player. And no disrespect to Jared Goff, but a healthy Joe Burrow is better than Jared Goff. So it's like, who's the guy that's attached to the better offense, the better quarterback? So that's why I have Chase up there. Now, obviously, Amon-Ra is in a better offense than Justin Jefferson. And it's kind of, I'm not going to really argue with anybody who wants to put Amon-Ra over Justin Jefferson for that reason alone. That's fine. Because Amon-Ra does have a better quarterback than Justin Jefferson and is on a better offense and a better team than Justin Jefferson. But I'm still willing to gamble on Justin Jefferson as the pure overall, in a vacuum, best wide receiver in the NFL. I'm still willing to bet on that. There comes a point where you can only lean on all of the outliers, the ancillary factors, to a point before you start to dismiss the talent. And remember, going into last year, Justin Jefferson was the consensus wide receiver one. Obviously, it's different this year, right? Last year, he had Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball. This year, it's some combination of Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings might not be very good. If Jefferson picks up an injury in Week 10 and they're, 3-7, they might have their bye week in there somewhere, but if they're 3-6 or 2-7 and they're petering toward the finish and they're out of the race for not just the division but the playoffs altogether, and it's like, we just need to plan for 2025 because in all likelihood that's what the Vikings are looking at. Maybe they have to shut him down, right? We're not expecting or predicting that's going to happen. I'm just giving you a scenario of what could happen. That possibility exists, no doubt. But going into the season, healthy, I'm still willing to operate with Justin Jefferson as the best overall wide receiver in the NFL. So I can only knock him so far down the list before I feel like I'm getting disrespectful of Justin Jefferson. Plus, again, I'm not, from the perspective of the quarterback play, I'm not like that worried about Sam Darnold because it's a fact. It's like it's a known, it's a trend in the NFL. Backup quarterbacks hyper target their top options. And especially if TJ Hawkinson is slow out of the gate or can't contribute at all for the first 4-6 weeks of the season, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to target Justin Jefferson 15 times a game. He should just come through on volume. It might be like pulling teeth here and there some weeks, but I just think his floor is ridiculously high. Despite everything that I just laid out about the Vikings offense. What's up, Greg? Good to see you, man. And Rojo. Good to see everybody coming in. Thanks you guys for coming in and hanging out. I can't operate about any issues with Tua, Greg. I mean, I think obviously the contract is looming over that entire situation. It's looming over Tua. It's looming over the Dolphins. But it's like every situation is different. What if Tua goes absolutely nuclear this year before the as a motivation factor? Before the Dolphins have an opportunity to extend him. It's still a really good offense. Mike McDaniel is a good play caller. Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are both, Tyreek is a top 2 or 3 receiver, and Waddle is in the top 15 range. When healthy, he's probably going to be ranked a little higher than that. This is an elite duo of receivers, one of the best tandems in the NFL. And Tua has proven to be one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL over the past couple of seasons, especially since they traded for Tyreek. I have no concerns. I have no concerns. Health is impossible to project, predict, whatever it is that you want to call it. We have to operate that the healthy guys are going to stay healthy. And I know that sounds easy, or like, well, you can't predict that. Well, no, but what I can do is be leery of the guys who are already hurt. Those are the guys that I can have a concern about, the guys who have already picked up an injury. I can't be concerned about the guys who haven't picked up an injury. So, no, I'm not worried about Tua. Therefore, I'm not worried about Tyreek. So going back to the top of the list, because I know I'm a little all over the place here right now. With Chase, up and down Bengals offense all year long. Right? Burrow suffers, was it a calf injury in the preseason last year or during training camp last year? So now he's spending the majority of his camp rehabbing from an injury. He's not getting normal reps with his guys. They pretty much have to go into the season with him cold. Right? Very few reps, very few opportunities to get into any type of rhythm during the preseason, which is what it's so critical for. You don't care about the performance. You just care about the opportunity for everybody to mesh and gel and all that stuff. So the Bengals don't get that opportunity right off the bat. They struggle. They start to maybe find their stride a little bit in the middle of the season. And then week 11, torn ligaments in Burrow's wrist. He's shut down for the year. Jake Browning had a couple of nice performances to his credit, but everything goes kind of to shit otherwise, right? The Bengals missed the playoffs. They didn't have a good season. The vibes are different now. And in spite of all of that, Ja'Marr Chase was still the wide receiver 11 in points per game. So on a per-game basis, he was still a wide receiver 1 with all of those bad outliers. So if we operate with an optimistic approach, with an optimistic viewpoint, with one of the most explosive wide receivers catching passes from one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, it's okay to project a little bit here. It's okay to move Chase up to 3rd overall because, 1, he's excellent, and 2, at least right now, today, the start of training camp, the vibes with the Bengals, we can't have, at least the Burrow to Chase connection, we can't have anything other than an optimistic outlook and approach with that. Chase 3rd. I kind of already talked about Jefferson versus Amon-Ra, but I will rehash it again. I just think Jefferson's floor is incredibly high just because of how good he is. He was the consensus wide receiver 1 coming into 2023. Obviously, there's a lot of change on the Vikings this year, but Jefferson himself is still awesome, is still excellent. He might not have wide receiver 1 overall upside this year, but I think he will come through in the form of volume, and that's what makes his floor incredibly high. And then finally, rounding out the top 5, Amon-Ra, stud performance last year, wide receiver 3 in total points, wide receiver 4 in points per game. Nothing has really changed for the Lions. So from that perspective, you feel good about Amon-Ra. There's continuity. The offense is still expected to be strong. The offense is still led by Jared Goff. There's great options in the backfield. Elite tight end to help keep things, to help keep pressure and attention away from Amon-Ra, at least entirely, in Sam Laporta. We're expecting a leap forward for Jamison Williams. That has been the vibe all offseason. That's been what the Lions have been pumping up and talking about pretty much since the draft. We'll see if that comes to fruition. All this to say, there's continuity that we can expect for Amon-Ra, and that's always a good thing. I don't think I'm disrespecting him by putting him wide receiver 5 overall. You may disagree. That's okay. But given the other circumstances with the other guys, that's why I have him 5th. So that's my top 5. A.J. Brown is my wide receiver 6. Again, I don't think I'm being too disrespectful here. Wide receiver 5 in total points last year, wide receiver 8 in points per game. I think he's exactly where he should be. He's a late first-round pick. You should be taking him 8th or 9th overall. In full PPR, maybe he jumps over the running backs, Breece and Bijan. In standard, maybe he's a little bit more of a late first-round pick, early second-round pick. Set an NFL record last year. I think it was 6 straight games with 125 receiving yards. And then the Eagles' offense went in the toilet. Their season as a whole went in the complete crapper. So, of course, AJ's performance suffered after that super strong stretch at the start of the season. Say that 5 times fast. Super strong stretch at the start of the season. I'm not. Moving on. We're expecting better from the Eagles this year after a horrendous crash and burn. They've revamped the coaching staff. Most of the offense is still intact. They lost Jason Kelce, stalwart along the offensive line, obviously. That's a big loss. But they still have good pieces there. Jalen Hurts, there are questions after his performance last year. There were not concerns about Jalen Hurts coming into the 2023 season, but then they reared their ugly head during the 2023 season. So now there's questions about Jalen Hurts. And maybe that's what keeps A.J. Brown in this. He's the top of the second tier instead of climbing into the first tier of the wide receiver ones. Still excellent, still a baller, still needs to be drafted like a top 6 or 7 wide receiver and a top 9 or 10 player overall, depending on your scoring. What we're hoping for is that the Eagles don't completely crap out in the second half of the season the way that they did in 2023, disrupting the flow of the offense and affecting the performance of everybody involved. So that would be A.J. Brown's one wart, and that's not even in his control. Like, if the coordinator stinks and the offense gets out of a rhythm, we can't pin that on a wide receiver. That's on the coach, that's on the offensive coordinator, that's on the quarterback. It's a combination of those 3 things. Nevertheless, AJ's a stud, should be once again. Wide receiver 6 with an ADP of 8.8, around 9. He's an easy first-round pick in half PPR, certainly in full PPR, and he probably even makes that cut in standard leagues as well, maybe closer to the turn. Let me move myself up so you can see the notes I have for the bottom half of the wide receiver ones. Let's keep it moving with Puka. Puka. His name sounds like something like it's a line from like Jabba the Hutt. Puka. Talk about the dude that, like, if I had told you this time last year, name me the 2024 top 12 wide receivers, this guy wouldn't be anywhere close to this high in the rankings. Yet here we are. Puka Nacua is a classic example of don't ever feel like NFL scouting is that much smarter than you are. Everybody got it wrong with him. Everybody. He fell to the 5th round of the NFL draft and now subsequently looks like one of the best receivers in the league. Top 10, top 12. Just like that. Absolutely balled out with Cooper Kupp in the lineup and without Cooper Kupp in the lineup. It did not matter for Puka's production. He was the wide receiver 6 in total points. He was the wide receiver 9 in points per game. He went nuclear the first 4 weeks of the season while Kupp was out of the lineup. He stayed good even when Cooper Kupp returned to the lineup. He is a clear cut, and when I say stayed good, it wasn't like he was like more of a wide receiver 2. No, he was still a wide receiver 1. He finished as a wide receiver 1 in points per game and total points. It's not like he played half the season without Cooper Kupp. He played a good fraction of it without Cooper Kupp, but not the majority of it. Still balled out, catching passes from Matthew Stafford, who is still doing it at a high level, playing for a coach in Sean McVay, who is still considered one of the elite offensive minds in the NFL. This should still be a good offense, no matter who the personnel is. I think he's currently he slightly leapfrogged Garrett Wilson in ADP. It was Garrett Wilson at the start of the offseason by a hair. Now it's Puka by a hair. Puka's getting drafted 10.5 overall. Garrett Wilson's getting drafted 10.7. So they are neck and neck. They are as close can get as far as who drafters are opting for. So there are going to be folks who are opting for Garrett Wilson over Puka Nacua because they are projecting. Well, Aaron Rodgers is back. Garrett Wilson has put up great numbers even in horrendous situations, horrendous offenses. Let's see what he does with a real competent quarterback for the first time in his career. Totally. Absolutely. But I don't know what a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers looks like coming off a torn Achilles. Can I assume he'll play at a Hall of Fame level? I don't know if I can assume. I can hope, but I don't know if I can assume. I know, based on last year, a healthy Matthew Stafford, still at 36, older, getting a little long in the tooth, still a little younger than Aaron Rodgers, though. I know that Matthew Stafford is still slinging that thing around. And I think it's fair to say Puka, I mean, he surpassed Kupp last year. Kupp is still very good. I don't think he's a record-breaking wide receiver anymore. That would be an awful lot to ask of anybody. But Puka leapfrogged him last year. Drafters feel that way, and the proof is in the pudding. He was a wide receiver 1 in all, however, any way you slice it last year, with Kupp in the lineup, without Kupp in the lineup. He's deserving of being a late first-round pick in your redraft league. In full PPR, he should probably be closer to a mid-first-round pick. I don't know, even in full PPR. This is where probably the cutoff would be in full PPR as far as okay, maybe I take A.J. Brown over Breece Hall and Bijan in full PPR, but I probably still have to go with those two backs ahead of any of the wide receivers. But there's a case to be made. I mean, Puka blew the doors off week 1 last year. I think he had 15 catches, his first freaking NFL game. So the argument could be made. In half PPR, I would take Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson over him. But in full PPR, you could take Puka over both of those guys. You could. Would I? I don't know if I'd be able to pull that trigger, but you could. So ADP of 10.5. He's a clear-cut first-rounder. And he's in a great situation. The question, of course, with Puka is, can he do it again? Can he do it 80% of what he did last year? 75% of what he did last year? He's still a low-end wide receiver 1 if he does, and that's where he's getting drafted. So maybe we're drafting him at his ceiling, which is always a little risky. But on top of proving how good he was last year, his situation is also good. Matthew Stafford is still playing at a very strong level, and Sean McVay is still one of the better offensive minds as far as the coaching goes in the NFL. Plus, Puka just proved it last year. On a per-snap basis. It wasn't even every single touch that he had, every reception that he had. He just looked good. Because he is good. Can he do what he did again last year? That might be a little tough to top. But can he give you 75 to 80% of it? I don't see why not. Coming in right behind him is Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 8. Obviously, Wilson's had a rough go of it for the first couple of years of his career. Horrendous offenses, horrendous quarterback play. That should change. With Aaron Rodgers coming back after suffering a torn Achilles 4 plays into the Jets season in 2023. That's the cure. That's the question, right? What does Aaron Rodgers at age 40 look like after an Achilles tear? What does that look like? But I'll say this. It can't be any worse than Zach Wilson. A 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers playing on one leg is probably better than anything Zach Wilson can give you on his best day. So that naturally elevates Garrett Wilson, who, in spite of everything that he has dealt with, especially last year, has proven to be a really good player. He cleared 10 fantasy points in half PPR scoring in 9 of 16 games last year, with nothing to work with. So he obviously didn't work out last year. Like, when I give you that info, he cleared 10 fantasy points in 9 of 16 games. Well, he was a high second-round pick last year, and he netted out as around a wide receiver 3. I think he might have finished as a wide receiver 4 on the season. Maybe wide receiver 3 in points per game. Or it was wide receiver 3 on the season, wide receiver 4 in points per game. It wasn't good. It was bad. But the numbers were still there as far as what you could conceivably expect from a guy who has to catch passes from Zach Wilson for 17 games. $95 catches, cleared 1,000 yards receiving. The issue was he only scored 3 touchdowns on a brutal offense that was almost never in the red zone. So again, we're projecting a little bit. Garrett Wilson is another one of the names on this list where we're projecting a little bit, but he has proven enough where the fact that the situation is improving this year, I have no reason to believe that he can't finish as a low-end wide receiver 1. There have also been whispers, the Jets, they could be in a market for another receiver. I don't, grain of salt, but there have been rumors floated out there that Davante Adams might be, he's another guy who made this list, might be, on the trade block. Vegas is obviously not prepared to compete given their current situation. Do they move on from a 30-year-old wide receiver? And do the Jets come calling and reconnect Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers? That would, of course, cap Garrett Wilson. But as of today, as of right now, the wide receiver 2 is an injured Mike Williams. So we got to operate like Garrett Wilson in this offense with an Aaron Rodgers coming back. Whatever he can give you is sure to be better than what Zach Wilson can give you. We can project Garrett Wilson as a low-end wide receiver 1. This is where I kind of start to deviate from underdog ADP. The next 3 guys, so far, I haven't deviated at all from ADP for the first 8 names. Like the names that I just listed, the rankings I have are how they are being drafted on Underdog Fantasy. Now is when I start to deviate. Wide receivers 9, 10, 11, and 12. These are the guys who I currently think are getting drafted too late compared to the guys that are going ahead of them. After Garrett Wilson, the next 4 wide receivers being drafted on Underdog Fantasy are Marvin Harrison, Drake London, Chris Olave, and Nico Collins. I only have one of those 4 names on this list. And London is a big-time projection. Kind of like Garrett Wilson is being projected to an extent, kind of like how I have Jamar Chase ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Drake London is far and away the biggest projection on this list. So of the next 4 names being drafted according to ADP, I only have one, and he's my last name. Rounding out my wide receiver ones are Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, and again, the aforementioned Drake London. All of whom are going, other than London, late second round. I think all of these guys should be going ahead of guys like Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, and Nico Collins. Olave and Nico are awesome. But based on their circumstances, I can't put them ahead of these guys. Marvin Harrison, we expect him to be awesome, but he's a rookie, getting drafted like 13th or 14th overall, and getting drafted as a wide receiver 1. Yes, we expect him to be the next thing at wide receiver. We expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to be the next big thing, but he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't taken a snap in the NFL. So I can rank him as like the wide receiver 15 and feel a little bit better about that. But I can't rank him as a wide receiver 10 or 11 and draft him at the end of the first round at the top of the second round. I just am not ready to do that. Again, we expect him to be awesome. We expect him to be the next big thing. But I got to see how that shakes out first before I rank him as a rookie as a top 10 wide receiver. So he just misses the cut. Deebo's my wide receiver 9. I think he's currently getting drafted as like the wide receiver 13 or 14. Again, on Underdog Fantasy. He is. Deebo's being drafted as the wide receiver 13. He's being drafted as the first wide receiver 2 with an ADP of 18.2. So in 10-team leagues, he's at the back of the second round. In 12-team leagues, he's in the mid to second half of the second round. I just think that's a little too late for a guy who finished as the wide receiver 9 in total points last year and tied for the wide receiver 6 in points per game. I think Deebo has earned it a little bit more. And now, obviously, Deebo comes with some risk, right? He's got a little bit more of a lengthier injury history, has had some difficulty staying on the field consistently over the course of his career. But when he's on the field, he's incredible. He's a lethal dual threat option for San Francisco, one of the upper echelon offenses in the NFL. He's not the focal point. That's Christian McCaffrey. But this team has so many weapons, it's hard to key on any one guy, leaving them likely to all be productive. And Deebo is the one who does the most from a versatility perspective of everybody outside of McCaffrey. $60 catches, 892 yards last year, 37 rushing attempts, another 225. His yards per carry are crazy. One, because Debo is a bull, an absolute stud, and two, San Francisco is Kyle Shanahan's a good play caller. That very creative, schemes up creative ways to get him the ball and let him do his thing as the yak monster of the NFL. Don't forget, Debo is the yak monster. He is the leader of the yak attack of anybody who plays in the NFL. Debo loves his yards after the catch and after the carry. Big-time playmaker on a top 5 offense in the NFL. I think they might have been top 2 last year. Plus, when you factor in the again, I said earlier at the top that I do not think Brandon Ayuk is going anywhere. I think he will be a 49er. I do not think San Francisco will let him get away in the form of a trade. But the possibility remains, right? It's out there. It's out there in the universe. Brandon Ayuk put it out there. He made a request to be traded. I don't think it's going to happen. But we have to leave the door open that it could, whether it in the 5 to 10% chance that it happens. That's how low I think it is. Now we're talking about a whole ton of work that is now available that the other options in San Francisco's offense need to soak up. If that happens, Debo's ADP skyrockets, and if it doesn't, I think it's leaving Debo flying under the radar a little bit. He was a wide receiver 1, no matter how you slice it in 2023. So I think he's being a little underdrafted as the wide receiver 13. He's versatile. The touchdowns are obviously a huge factor. He needs to come through in that department, and he needs to stay healthy, something that Debo has done somewhat consistently here and there, but he's missed his fair share of time. So obviously those are the concerns. But if he's on the field and stays healthy and continues to operate in his Swiss Army knife role, which he will, I think he should be getting drafted a little higher than he is now. I've got Davante Adams as my wide receiver 10. This is a little bit of projecting, and it's a very similar situation that Justin Jefferson is in. We're not expecting Vegas to be a very good offense. Adams caught passes from Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell last year. Finished as the wide receiver 13 in total points. The points per game, though, were not good. Adams was the wide receiver 20 in points per game. So on a per-week basis, you drafted him as a wide receiver 1, and he gave you a wide receiver 2 output. That's not good. Of course, that's not good. So I'm projecting with Davante a little bit from the perspective of he's potentially working on a future Hall of Fame career. You bet on talent like that. And you could call it splitting hairs or just barely an upgrade or whatever have you. If Gardner Minshew wins the quarterback job, I think he will produce slightly better results than what the Raiders trotted out last year. Indianapolis, with Gardner Minshew at the helm most of the season, was a top half offense in the league, which isn't great, but consider the situation. Gardner Minshew gave the Colts some stability last year after they lost Anthony Richardson. They weren't great, but they were good enough. They weren't awful. They weren't bottom of the league. They were middle of the pack. They were top half of the league in total offense. So I think Gardner Minshew gives them a little bit better quarterback play than what they had last year. And if it's Aiden O'Connell, you can only hope, and again, maybe project, that he's better in his second season compared to his rookie season. So, like, it's possible that there's plenty of avenues where the quarterback play is just better for the Raiders this year than it was last year. Adams is awesome. I think he could still do it at a high level. The numbers weren't there at the end of the day last year, but finishing as the wide receiver 13 in total points tells me that Adams can still do this. Even though he's 30 now and it's not a good offense, Adams is still a stud. You bet on talent until when it's a talent as good as Davante Adams, you bet on it until the wheels fall off. Older players who are a little bit more middling over the course of their career, yeah, sure. You want to shy away from those guys as they enter their age 29, 30, 31 seasons, especially if they've got some injury history. Adams doesn't really, and is still just flat out a good upper echelon player. Savvy veteran, crafty guy at this point who can get by with, experience on top of skill set. So it might be a little diminished, but it's still there. So maybe it's a little bit of a respect thing as opposed to, like, what makes the most sense for 2024. But it's not like Adams completely fell off a cliff last year, and I think the offense will be better in 2024 than it was in 2023. And then, of course, you can always root for, I don't know how likely it is, but you can always root for a trade to greener pastures with Adams. Will the Raiders do it? That's another conversation. That's another question. But it's not out of the realm of possibility if they get off to another slow start, they ultimately make a call and determine that they're not contenders this year. They ship off Adams for a day 2 pick to a team that is better suited to maximize him. How likely is this? I don't know. 15, 20%. It's not very high. But I wouldn't say that the possibility doesn't exist. It's possible. Adams is still good. He's got an ADP of around 19. Back half of the second round in 10 and 12 team formats. I think there are some names that are going ahead of him who shouldn't be. And real quick, do I think any rookie wide receivers break into the top 12? I mean, we know that the obvious potential options are Marvin Harrison, who's getting drafted like a wide receiver 1 without having played a snap in the NFL, and Malik Neighbors. I want to believe Malik Neighbors can have a strong wide receiver 2 season, but it's hard to project him having a wide receiver 1 season just because of the offense. The hype is real. The talent with Neighbors, I think, is real. But it's going to be Daniel Jones. If the Giants sputter out, maybe they turn to Drew Lock. They don't have anything else. I mean, I don't want to say anything else. Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt are still young guys who could prove that they can be good regular contributors in an NFL offense. That could still happen. But there's no proven upper echelon talent in this Giants receiver room. It is Neighbors as a 20-year-old rookie, and then Isaiah Hodgins, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt. I feel like I'm forgetting a name. Darius Slayton. Rock solid field stretcher. Strong, really good contributor. Obviously, he's not an elite pass-catching talent. He's a good player. He should probably start for them. I think he's proven the most of the guys I mentioned. But Neighbors should be the clear top guy for the Giants right away. The question is, what does that amount to? What does that amount to with whether it's Daniel Jones or Drew Lock? The Giants' offensive line is still not good for the 45th year in a row. Wide receiver 2, yes, I think Neighbors can do that. Wide receiver 1, I think there are too many factors working against him for that to happen as a rookie. And then, yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. is already getting drafted as a wide receiver 1. The talent is there. The situation is there, too. Obviously, Kyler Murray is a plenty good enough quarterback to support a wide receiver 1. It's just we are drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. in redraft so high. We didn't draft Jamar Chase this high. We didn't draft Justin Jefferson this high. We didn't draft CeeDee Lamb this high. We didn't draft any of these guys this high as rookies. So it just feels very risky to bank on that happening. Could he be a wide receiver 1? Yeah. I mean, again, Marvin Harrison Jr. is expected to be the next big thing, the next guy at wide receiver in the NFL. We're expecting big things from him. Drafted 4th overall, absolutely stellar collegiate campaign. Has all the tools, has all the skills, and in a good landing spot. Catching passes from Kyler Murray. It's a good landing spot. But I'm not willing to go there as far as ranking him a wide receiver 1. I would say he has a better chance to do it than Malik Neighbors, though, because his situation is a little bit better. And then, of course, you've got Rome Odunze, 3rd in the pecking order behind Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be good. I think he'll be plenty good long term. But those are 2 very good vets, especially Keenan Allen, that he's going to have to earn enough opportunities over. I just think for this year, for 2024, the deck is stacked against him to break into the top 12 wide receivers. Odunze, that is. Nobody could have predicted Puka was going to do what he did last year, and never would have been a name thrown out there as far as the 2023 rookies go, as far as which rookie do you think cracks the wide receiver 1s coming into the 2024 season. Puka was not on that short list. It would have been Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, oh my God, Quentin Johnston. Those were the guys who would have been, suggested just by the nature of the beast, the nature of the draft capital. But go figure, it was Puka. I mean, as far as an opportunity perspective, Harrison and Neighbors have a great opportunity from the perspective of they are their team's top guys. They both step in right away as their team's top receiver. Will it happen, though, is another question. And I can't bring myself to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. 13th, 14th overall when he hasn't taken a snap. But we'll see. That's the fun in it. Rounding out my top 12, Mike Evans, Drake London. Mike Evans just continues to get disrespected, I feel like, year after year. All that dude does is wake up, brush his teeth, eat some breakfast, and catch 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. That's just what Mike Evans does. 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, death, taxes, and Mike Evans just consistently doing it year after year. His ADP is down to 23.7. He's a pick at the turn. He's a 3rd-round pick in 10-team leagues. I have one question. What are we doing? What are we doing? He was the wide receiver 4 in total points last year. He was tied with Debo for the wide receiver 6 in points per game. Mike Evans is still a damn stud. I know he's a little older, but all he does is roll out of bed, drinks some coffee, takes a poop, and puts up 1,000 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns. That's what Mike Evans does. He is the man. He is a beast. He is a future Hall of Famer, and I do not agree with the number of wide receivers that are getting drafted over him. Baker Mayfield clearly had eyes for him last year. He's back in the mix. So there's some continuity, some stability from last year for Tampa Bay. I almost feel like I should put Mike Evans over a couple of the names that I have listed ahead of him. If I have a top 3 pick and I'm drafting late second, top of the third, I am drafting Mike Evans every single freaking time. He is getting drafted too late. All he has done every single year of his career is produce. And once again, he's getting disrespected from an ADP perspective. I am here to put an end to that. Draft Mike Evans. Draft Mike Evans. And enjoy the 1,000-yard receiving, 10-touchdown season that he has produced every single season. Draft Mike Evans. Until he gives you a reason not to, draft Mike Evans. Dude's an absolute baller. Now, I round things out with probably the most extreme projection on here, but to be fair, everybody is doing an extreme projection when it comes to Drake London. He's got an ADP of 14.7. He is being drafted firmly in the top 15 in half PPR scoring, at least on Underdog Fantasy. The expectations for Drake London have gone through the roof, even though last year he was the wide receiver 40 in total points. 40. Now again, we're projecting here, right? Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke are backups at best in the NFL. They are not starters. And yet that's what London had to work with last year, and it led to an incredibly inconsistent 2023 season. So that wasn't his fault. But still, we are really riding a lot of hope with Drake London. The expectations are fair. He's proven that he looks like he's going to be a really good receiver. And he just needs some consistent quarterback play. That's what we are hoping he finally has now after Kirk Cousins signed with the Falcons in the offseason. London had 6 games last year where he cleared double-digit fantasy points and half PPR scoring. But he had like 8 or 9 games where he finished with under like 9 fantasy points in half PPR scoring. He goose-egged week 1. He had 4 in week 3, 8.4 week 7, 8 week 8, 5.1 week 10, 1.3 week 13, 3.4 week 15, 5.4 week 16, 7.6 week 17. He killed you if you had to start him in the fantasy playoffs. He killed you. He was a great play for your opponent if you had to play Drake London in the fantasy playoffs last year. Now, again, this was a really bad Falcons passing attack in 2023 that was led by the incompetent Arthur Smith. Good luck, Pittsburgh. So, not only does he get a quarterback upgrade, but we get to revamp the entire coaching staff. So, it's nothing but positive vibes right now for not just London, but the Falcons offense in general, that they will be better and that their top options will be stronger guys to turn to and believe in for fantasy purposes. We're doing an awful lot of projecting with Drake London. But I think the sample size, I think he has proven enough times, just enough times, that he is a good wide receiver who has just drawn the short straw thus far in his career. His quarterbacks as a pro have been some combination of Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and Taylor Heineke. That is Terry McLaurin levels of unfortunate. Now he has Kirk Cousins. Coming off a torn Achilles. So there is that. But there hasn't been any news or reports that Cousins is going to be limited for week 1. Now, obviously, that could change. We're hoping for the best. But we haven't heard anything about Cousins' rehab is, behind schedule or anything like that. So we can only operate with an optimistic viewpoint here. I do not think, evidenced by my rankings, I do not think he should be drafted 15th overall with an ADP of 14.7. I think that's too high. I think his ADP is more rightfully around where it should be, where like Debo and Davante Adams are getting drafted. 18, 19, 20. Some people are, people are putting, they'll put him over Adams because of youth, plus the projection of the better offense. I get all that. But we still need to see it before I put him over a proven guy like Davante Adams. I'm happy to make him a wide receiver 1 as far as our preseason projections, the last wide receiver 1 to crack the top 12, but that's as high as I can put him. I'm happy to put him there. I think he will deliver. I think he will come through now that his situation is much improved. But that's as high as I can go with Drake London. So, I think to that point, I think he's being a little overdrafted. I don't have that many shares of him. But that doesn't mean that I don't think he can have a strong season. He probably just won't be on very many of my rosters. We will see how things shake out in Atlanta. But he is by far the guy that I think people are projecting on the most. Nevertheless, he makes my top 12. I think he has shown enough where we can project that he has earned the right to be ranked here. We're playing with a little bit of fire. But I think London has proven talented enough that now that he has an actual real NFL quarterback throwing him the ball, he can be successful on a more consistent basis. And that'll do it. Top 12 rankings as training camp gets underway. 4 wide receivers for the 2024 season. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, Debo Samuel, Davante Adams, Mike Slept-On Evans, and Drake London. If anybody has any thoughts, questions, agree, disagree with anything in particular, happy to talk shop for the next couple of minutes here. That's what I got for you. Just another reminder for anybody who joined late and maybe missed it at the top of the show. This will be my last stream for a couple of weeks. I have to go on a work assignment that is going to pull me away from home for a couple of weeks. So I will not be around for live streams. I will be around to continue to put some videos out. I will make sure I make the time for that. So I'm not going to be too far away. But far away enough where I'm not going to be able to stream probably again until the middle of August after the Olympics are over. Again, I got a work assignment where I will be working that for like 12-hour days for the duration of the games. So, if you happen to be a fan of the Olympics at all and you're watching it, think of me as you're watching it. I'm probably, hunkered down in a lab somewhere, just barely trying to survive with the amount of work that I'm expected to have. So, live streams will be on hold for a little bit after today. I will be coming back in August, just in time for the preseason to get it to be in full swing. And I'll continue to have some videos pumping out on the channel over the course of that time. So I'll be sure to timestamp this guy. I'll find the time again to cut this up. Maybe do smaller segments when I talk about just one or two guys in this list. I kind of lumped the top 5 together for a good portion of the stream earlier, so I'll have to find a way to chop that up into segments that make sense, that are a little bit more digestible. But that's my thing to figure out and not yours. Top 12 running back stream is also available on the channel. I have that one time stamped already in case you haven't caught that. I did top 12 quarterbacks a few weeks ago. That one is time stamped as well. I haven't chopped that one up yet. I think the running backs and the wide receivers are a little bit more of an appealing conversation for folks to have, especially in one quarterback leagues. Quarterback isn't as much of a priority. And it's like quarterbacks are kind of easy, right? Like in Superflex leagues, hammer them. And then in one quarterback leagues, just like wait as long as possible. You know what I mean? Like, so that's not as enticing a conversation as the running back wide receiver conversation is. So I'm prioritizing chopping those guys up into like slightly more digestible segments for folks to check out in smaller doses. I think that's all I have for tonight. Appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out, whether it was for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Always appreciate everybody coming in, hanging out. A regular cadence of streams will return as we get closer to the season. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. In all likelihood, the Saturday, Sunday streams this year, my start-sit questions, just to manage things a little bit easier and to actually give you guys the attention that your start-sit questions deserve. Those probably will become members-only chats, the practice squad level. So you don't have to do it now, but if you're interested in asking start-sit questions on Saturday, Sunday, those will likely be members-only streams this year. You only need to be at the practice squad level for you to be eligible to ask questions. But I'm thinking, make it a little bit easier for you to get your question answered sooner, as opposed to just making it open to the general public. I know that it's just it'll be 99 cents a month. I know that not necessarily everybody that can just automatically do that. I understand that, but I do find myself up against it quite a bit and want to make sure that I get to everybody during those start-sit streams. So I'm just trying to find a fair middle ground, and I think that is one. It's just a 99 cent a month commitment. Not too much to get some in-depth thoughts for your start-sit questions, because I do think I give as much time as I possibly can to each individual question when the situation calls for it. There are other membership levels on the channel if you're interested. The starter level will give you one-on-one access to me whenever you want to schedule it, where we can go over whether it's a dynasty team or a redraft team. If you want to talk about your situation, we'll arrange like a 30-minute call. You would have access to me whenever you want to do that with that level of membership. And then the final level of membership is All Pro. We don't quite have the number just yet, but if I get to a suitable number, we could start a redraft league with the other members. I would, of course, commission it, and your entry fee would just be the membership. Draft against me, draft against other members of the channel, and test your mettle if you're interested. Just wanted to throw that out there. Okay. I think that's all I got for the rest of this evening. Again, I'll continue to put videos out while I am on this work hiatus. So be on the lookout. Mid-August is when I'll likely be returning when the games are over. So I'll be sure to pick up the streams then. But I'll make myself available and accessible as much as I can. You can also join the Discord, or you can follow me on Instagram. That link is in the second link of the description of this live stream. I am on Instagram now for those who utilize that platform on social media. So I put my shorts over there. I'll have another short ready to go for tomorrow. And who knows? Maybe I'll throw in some behind the scenes stuff as well, just to keep you guys in the loop and let you know I'm not too far away. And then the Discord link is in previous streams, previous videos that are on this channel, if you care to go searching for it. But it is available. It's in the description of a lot of these videos. Okay. If there's nothing else, I should probably get packing. I have to pack for 2.5 weeks, and I haven't started yet, so probably bad procrastination on my part, but you know how it goes. You get busy, you got stuff to do. Maybe you buy College Football 25 and you're working on your dynasty rebuild, and that stuff takes time. Game comes back for the first time in a decade. What are you going to do? Not buy it? Okay. If there's nothing else, I think that's it for this evening, guys. Thank you so much again for the support, for coming in and hanging out. Appreciate y'all's time. I will be around. Enjoy the next couple of weeks. Again, no live streams for a couple of weeks as I do this work assignment, but I will make sure to get videos out. So enjoy. Have fun. Stay safe. I will see you guys when I get back, just in time for the preseason to really kick off. And we'll really start to get into the thick of things. We'll fire off some more drafts, some more underdog drafts. You can see my, some strategies as they unfold real time. In a few weeks' time, that might change. It probably will. Somebody's ADP will go way up or way down from where it is today. And we'll adjust and we'll figure all that stuff out accordingly. So, till then, guys, thank you as always. I will timestamp this. I will timestamp the stream for anybody who may be catching this late. And I'll slice this up into some smaller, digestible pieces of content for your viewing pleasure as we move through this hiatus that I have to go on. Thank you, guys, as always. Appreciate y'all's time. Everybody have a great week. And I'll see y'all when I get back. Sometime in mid-August.